Thing. I didn't know we were going to have class tonight or not, but Matt wanted a class, so we'll have a class. So we're going to do Ruth, more aliens and strangers. I think there's nothing more alien and stranger than the story of Ruth. So we're going to pick that up. I'll be honest, I recycled part of this lesson from another time I taught it. So it's always different with different comments. No AI, just recycled. So.
There was something, I didn't know the details, something about a fetus in the womb and AI. It's some artificial thing.
Fetus in the womb and AI? Huh. It's got a lot of potential. It's got it learns from the past. If you train it depends on what you train it on. The current stuff, they call it LLM, large language models. So they'll train it on a series, whatever they can find. So it's just the story of an infinite number of monkeys with an infinite number of typewriters can do the complete works of Shakespeare. That kind of thing, right? You train them to do Shakespeare, they'll learn how to do it. Computer's no different. It's a math game. They'll figure it out. Creating stuff, it's a little different, Even the stuff that's like this picture is a created picture, but it's based on looking at other pictures. I used, the words I used to compare them to other stuff. It's used stuff in the past. It didn't come up with something that looks like a jellyfish. So anywho. Yeah, so that's an AI-generated picture of Ruth. Probably more Naomi than Ruth, I would think. But if she was an alien, she would, right? If she was an outer space alien rather than just an alien she might look that way. So no, Ruth in the Bible did not look that way. So I had fun with it. Until I got fussed at, believe it or not. This came from Bing, their AI, our generation, and I got a notice that I was violating the rules and regulations because I was looking to turn a Moabite woman into an extraterrestrial, and it said that I may be making fun of someone. So it's maybe, I don't know. So anyhow, I guess I was just, who knows? Huh?
Big brothers everywhere.
Big brothers everywhere, yeah. So, anywho, I got the slap on the hand for trying to have a alien Ruth. Whatever. So, anyways, there it is. So I got the story in here in case we're only going to go until cookie time. Matt said we could do that. Just go to cookie time and then pick up afterwards. That sounds fair to me. We got the story just in case we don't finish because there's no way to finish. So at least you get the whole story. Last night we talked about aliens and strangers. This is really what we talked about. The whole night we talked about different verses in the Bible of how God treats aliens and strangers. He wants us to treat aliens and strangers. We'll pick up. There was a famine in Judah. So Elimelech and his wife Naomi and their sons Mahlon and Chilion moved to Moab. Elimelech passed away in Moab. Mahlon and Chilion married Moabite girls, Orpah and Ruth. After about 10 years, Mahlon and Chilion passed away too, leaving Naomi without her husband and sons in Moab. Naomi heard that the famine was over in Judah, so she packed up to go back home. I'm out of here. Naomi told Orpah and Ruth, go back to your families in hopes of finding new husbands. Orpah and Ruth answered, surely we'll return with you to your people. Orpah was convinced to stay in Moab, but Ruth clung to Naomi. Naomi tried to talk Ruth into returning. Go back with Orpah to your people and to your gods. Ruth answered her, wherever you go, I will go. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. They returned to Bethlehem, and the whole town was excited to see them. Naomi told them, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. It was the beginning of the barley harvest. Ruth went out and gleaned grain that was dropped or left behind. Boaz, a relative of Elimelech, owned a barley field. He came out to greet the reapers. The Lord be with you. Boaz asked, whose young woman is this? The reaper supervisor replied, she's the Moabite woman who returned with Naomi. She asked to glean grain here. And if you remember, if you were here last night, at the end of it, we actually got to the Leviticus part where God says, Don't harvest everything. Leave the corners, leave the edges of the fields for the poor, for the needy, for this. Boaz told Ruth, glean in my fields, stay close to the young women. I've told the young women to keep their hands off you. I've told the young men to keep their hands off you. Ruth bowed before Boaz. Why have I found favor in your eyes when I'm a foreigner? Boaz replied, I've heard about all that you do. I have heard about all that you have done for Naomi since Elimelech died. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. At mealtime, Boaz invited Ruth to eat until she was satisfied. Ruth saved some of it for Naomi. Ruth gleaned in the fields until sundown. She had collected about a bushel of barley grain. Ruth brought the barley grain and meal leftovers back to Naomi, who was amazed. Ruth says, I gleaned in the field owned by a man named Boaz. And Naomi says, Boaz? He's a close relative of ours. Ruth did as Boaz told her. She stayed close to the young women and gleaned in Boaz's field through the barley and wheat harvests. Ruth continued to live with Naomi, but Naomi had a plan to get her a home of her own. Naomi instructed Ruth, pretty yourself up and go to Boaz while he sleeps on the threshing floor. Per Naomi's instructions, Ruth went to the threshing floor where Boaz slept. She uncovered his feet and laid down. Boaz woke at midnight and found Ruth lying at his feet. She said, I am your servant. Spread the corner of your garment over me. Boaz told Ruth, there is a relative closer than me. If he won't take you as a wife, I will. In the morning, Boaz went to the city gate and found that closer relative. Boaz told the relative Naomi has returned from Moab. She wants to sell a piece of Elimelech's property. You have first dibs, but if you buy it, Ruth comes with it. The relative answered Boaz, I can't do that. It would mess up my own inheritance. It's all yours if you want it. The relative slipped off his sandal and handed it to Boaz to confirm that he surrendered his dibs on the property and Ruth. People and elders at the gate offered their blessings to Boaz and Ruth. Ruth and Boaz had a son named Obed. Obed would be the grandfather of King David. There's the whole story. All right, anybody see anything foreign, alien, strange? Who were aliens, strangers, or foreigners in this story? Okay, so we got Ruth. Ruth, as she comes back from Moab into Israel, into Canaan. I guess it's Israel. So you got Naomi and the whole family, right, as they go into Moab. It's a famine. They're going to somewhere and they don't know. Clayton said Boaz. He's as he marries a foreigner. I mean, it's to learn what she does and stuff is different. You know, I'll give you that. It worked out apparently. They had kids in the lineage of Christ, so she found God and worshiped God through that. What did you see in this story that was foreign, strange, not quite? You'd have to go to some kind of text to figure it out. Traditions and stuff.
You understand why
Naomi is so upset having lost her husband. But it's unusual in Scripture that somebody says God has dealt harshly with me, almost like this is God's fault that I'm back here.
Yeah, you're right. You don't see that very often. She says God has dealt harshly with me, and that's why I'm back here. You see that? The book of Judges. I mean, they know that when things are going good, they fall away from God. But when things are going bad, you know, they call for God. I think, do they realize that they've done wrong? He's dealt harshly with them? I don't know. Famines, some of that kind of stuff. God causes problems. I mean, he's had some of that where he withheld rain.
we're always the problem.
It's our ability to recognize.
Yeah. She recognizes it. You're right. She does recognize that.
Motivate people. Because it's like, this storm is affecting people, the way they're driving even.
Oh, speaking of that, so I got busy setting everything else up here. But Gail Griffin called, and there's a fire up where they're at between their house and Chris's house. And it's very close to their house, so she wanted us to pray for them that the fire gets put out. So we're going to tell you what, I'll start out with a prayer. I should have started with that earlier. Dear Lord, we ask that you protect the Griffin families, that you protect them from the fire and the loss of property. Father, we ask that you put that fire out, get it under control. Take that risk away, take that nervousness away. Father, we know it's within your control, and we know that you love all of them very much. Father, we ask this in your Son's name. Amen. I'm not tying a fire at their house to anything bad that they might have done, but we don't do that. But yeah, probably a lightning strike, I assume. The storm moved in. Okay. Just anything else different, foreign, weird? Taking the shoe off is a weird one, wasn't it? Right here. Yeah. That's not. There it is. He slips off his shoe and he hands it to somebody else to confirm that he surrendered his rights. He surrendered his dibs. We don't do that very often? No? Bertha takes off her shoe. What happens when you take off your shoe? Just one shoe.
Well, if it's the end of the day,
If it's the end of the day,
you wouldn't want the shoe.
no. Many a kid's been spanked with one shoe. I'm sure of that. Sure of that. I had an American history teacher in high school, Miss Oakley, that she had a very strange way of doing things, very effective way. But if somebody says, "Hey, can I borrow a pencil?" She goes, "Hey, can I borrow your shoe?" And if you gave her your shoe, she would loan you a pencil. She said, "I know you want your shoe back. I know I'll get my pencil back." So it was strange, but it was effective.
You said borrow.
Borrow. That's borrow, not keep. She got it. Okay, the sandal thing's a little different. Some of these things, as we learn, as we study, you got to go to some kind of commentary. I mean, there's a lot of change that's happened in 3,000 years. Traditions, how we do things and stuff have changed. So, yeah, that one. This thing right here, where spread the corner of your garment over me. Take your blanket and put it on me to show that I'm yours. That's a little different too, isn't it? So, just some foreign, different stuff.
Things like that.
Yeah, different cultures, different times. So, like I said,
It offends somebody.
right? Yeah, you learn so you don't offend somebody. Yeah, if you happen to spread your are you cold, and you spread your blanket over somebody, and all of a sudden you're married to them, that'd be you wouldn't want to make that mistake.
Wait a minute.
Not that blanket, no. Yeah, I've been to soccer games and stuff in the cold. I know. I could go that way, I guess. All right. Like I said, this story has got a lot of foreign in it. It's got a lot of alien, a lot of strangers. It's one of the stories, I mean, we see a lot of stuff, but this story just seems to have a lot of it. And it's got a purpose behind it. And I like that too. So we won't get through the whole thing, but you have now. You've been through the whole story. So let's start out in Ruth 1, verses 1 through 2. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech. The name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to the country of Moab and remained there. So when does the story of Ruth take place? Time of the Judges, right? Time of the Judges. So pretty early in the Old Testament. Genesis, Leviticus. Numbers, something like that. All right, I think I goofed it up already. Genesis, Exodus, is it Numbers? Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. So 7, 8 books. 8th book of the Bible. So it happens pretty early. Long, long time ago. I said 3,000 years. You're probably looking at 4,000 years. So where does the story of Ruth start out? Bethlehem. Huh. That's funny, isn't it? Starts out where Christ was born. Right there, same town. If you didn't know, the red circle shows where Bethlehem is, along with everything else. So that's where Bethlehem is. If you're ever looking for good maps, the Mormons have good maps. They've spent a lot of time getting good maps and putting them on the internet to use. So, we use them once in a while. Bethlehem is one of the oldest towns in Palestine. Do you know what it was called before the Hebrews moved in? Let's see if I got it here. There's a clue right there. It says sons are Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem. So the Ephrathites, as you move in here, back Genesis 35:19. Watch out! You just had to do it. I don't blame him. He even got Mickey standing up. So this is Genesis 35:19. Rachel died and was buried in Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. So Ephrath is what it was called before the Hebrews moved in. So that's why they were Ephrathites.
Lack of words, Christians.
No, they're not Christians.
No, they're not Christians.
Yeah, they set the path for that. Yeah, in the end, like I said, Ruth marries Boaz, so they're family, they're from this area, and that's in the lineage of Christ. She's the great-grandmother of David, who is related to both Mary and Joseph. So yeah, this is where it kind of all happens right there. And you can see parallels to Christ in a lot of this stuff. So yeah, it's good that there's a story, an account that happens at the same place. How many were in the family that left Bethlehem? 2. 2 people in the family that left Bethlehem. Do I hear 3? It's like an auction.
I see
4?
so far.
I got 4. Naomi, Elimelech, Mahlon, and Chilion. 4. Elimelech's name means God is king. That's a good name. Like Clayton pointed out, we know Christ comes from this area. His name is very, very similar. God is king is what Elimelech means. Naomi means pleasant. Her name means pleasant. We already saw that. Later she calls herself bitter. Mahlon's name means sickness. Didn't see that coming, did you? I don't know. They have names that mean something. And like you say, why would you name your kid sickness? Why would you name your kid finished?
Because you're finished with it.
You're finished, yeah. I've read a couple fiction books here lately, and they both had the account of Babel in there. And they used the fact that, one used the fact that words, regardless of the language, might have some kind of deep-seated meaning inside. The other one used the fact that the words, as they evolve, they take meanings with them. It's not that these names would shape, like in this case, these names would shape who these guys are. It was, like I said, it's a fiction book, but that premise, that the words and stuff would shape the destiny. Of course, both of them had magic and stuff involved, but anyways. Yeah, it's kind of strange. One's named Sickness and one's Finished, and they both die young. So, what transpired at Bethlehem that made his family decide to pick up and move to Moab? Famine. There were no cookies to be had in Bethlehem. Excuse me. What was God's common purpose for famines in the Old Testament?
To me, it was, like I said earlier, it's a way to get people to move.
It's a way to get people to move. It's a way to get them to acknowledge God. But you're right, they do move. You see that with the story of Joseph, right? The famine there. His family comes to him in Egypt. They spread the news. Yeah, I mean, that's later on. I mean, in the New Testament, you do see that there's a famine in, is the famine in Jerusalem or is it somewhere else where they collect for it? Like there's a famine somewhere and they collect for it to send money to help the Christians and stuff. And as the people spread, they spread the word too. Leviticus 26, if you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and perform them, then I will give you rain in its season, and the land shall yield its produce, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. Your threshing shall last till the time of vintage. The vintage shall last till the time of sowing. You shall eat your bread to the full and dwell in your land. Anyways, if you don't obey me, you despise my statutes, I will appoint terror over you, wasting disease and fever, and shall consume the eyes. And you see it. So it's something God uses. I will break the pride of your power. I will make your heavens like iron and your earth like bronze, and your strength shall be spent in vain. For your land shall not yield its produce, nor shall the trees of the land yield their fruit. So, anyways, if that was already in Leviticus, if you don't work with God's rules, it'll happen. So what do you think caused the famine? It says, and it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine. What's the story of Judges? Typically we teach Judges as a circle. Okay? At the top, people are with God and things go good. They stop. They take things in their own hands. One of the themes of Judges is everyone did what was right in their own eyes. So when they kind of wander away from God, and as you start going down at 3 o'clock, towards 6 o'clock, things start getting worse. Things get bad. Because as they get completely away from God, things get terrible. God usually sent in the neighbors somewhere, somehow, and they would come in and cause a war or something. And then they would cry out to God, and things would get better as they start walking back to 12 o'clock as they get closer and closer to God. So it's a circle. It's kind of how, and you see this in Judges, it runs forward, but it's a bigger and bigger circle. So it's probably, in the time of Judges, it's just one of those things. They were away from God, doing what was right in their own eyes. It was funny. I liked that. You had Mickey jumping up. I think he pulled on you. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure.
Think about that.
You forget. Take your life in your own hands. It's called a joke.
We can bring a little bit of VBS into the adult class here.
You got to. So do you think the famine caused Elimelech and his family to move to Moab, or did it just give them a good reason?
Of course it did, because that's how they made a living.
The story of Ruth, we used to have a 100-pound dog. We used to have a chocolate lab. Colby was 100 pounds. He's a good dog. I think I heard him bark 12 times or so in the years we had him. He would not pull on a leash, but you would go the way he wanted. he'd lean on you. He'd just lean. 100 pounds of dog leaning on you. If you're going to go that way, but he wants to go that way, he'd lean on you, and you'd find yourself going this way. And I relate the story of Ruth the same way. He didn't tell them, get out of here and go to Moab. He didn't tell, he didn't send Boaz to find Ruth. He didn't send Ruth to find Boaz. He leaned on him a little bit, just a little bit. And you don't see it until you know the whole story. Just a little leaning. Our current dog does not lean on you to make you move. He will growl, though. Just a little bit. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this helped them move, you know. It's a motivation. So, Bethlehem's in a circle on the left. They cut around the Dead Sea, and Moab is on the right. It's on the other side of the Jordan and such. People of Moab, the Moabites, were descendants of Moab, in case you didn't know. In case you really didn't know, they're descendants of Moab. Is that a shock to anybody that the Moabites are descendants of Moab? The whole land's named after Moab. Then Lot went up to Zoar and built in the mountains, and his 2 daughters were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. And he and his 2 daughters dwelt in a cave. Thus both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. Firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to today. So the Moabites were descendants of Moab, who was a incestual son of Lot. So that's where the Moabites come from. So how are they related to the Israelites? Cousins, kind of, right? Somehow. They're cousins, and they're enemies, they're foreigners, they're strangers, but they're kind of cousins. Second Kings 3, 26 through 27. And when the king of Moab saw the battle was too fierce for him, he took with him 700 men to draw swords to break through to the king of Edom, but they could not. Then he took his eldest son, who would have reigned in his place, and offered him as a burnt offering upon the wall. There was great indignation against Israel. So they departed from him and returned to their own land. The Moabites worshipped Chemosh. Apparently, he accepted human sacrifices. We hear about this in the Old Testament, false gods and their way of doing things. This is one of theirs. Yeah, here's the Deuteronomy 23, 3 through 4. An Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants shall enter the assembly of the Lord forever, because they did not meet you with bread and water on the road when you came out of Egypt, because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, from Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. So God gave instructions about Moabites. What was that instruction? What was that law? Not welcome here. Don't bring them into the family. Don't bring them into the towns. Don't bring them into worship. They're not welcome here. They treated my people poorly. Those people are on the outs. What kind of responsibilities would Elimelech need to assume when he took his family to live in Moab? As a foreigner now in a new land, what kind of responsibilities is he going to have? Housing, food. You can't just go to Publix. The Publix of Moab was not yet open. Can't go to McDonald's on Moab. They couldn't find enough help to run it. Housing, food. What else? Yeah. You know, you got 2 sons, and at some point they're going to need wives, right? But not the local girls. That's already forbidden. A lot of responsibilities. Pack your family up and take them somewhere. Anybody ever just move somewhere with nobody there? My family moved here from Indiana in '74, but there were. Yeah. The culture around you is different. Florida's a lot different than Indiana, especially when mom and dad both moved away from their families to here when they didn't know anybody. some of that stuff gets to be like the culture. Who do you call on for help? The donkey gets a flat tire. So there's a lot of responsibilities there. As Christians, can we experience similar dangers moving to a new home? Sure. Especially with your children. Especially with your kids. Especially with your kids. Grant's in the D.C. area for the summer. Second summer in that area, and the church he's there. He's an intern there, working with the teenagers and the young adults. But he fits in. He's happy with the church there, and he's happy to fit in. And it is, that's one of our worries there was far away from home. You don't know nobody. What will happen? So it's good to know that he's, we can't check on him every day, know if he goes or doesn't go, or involved or not involved. But he has. So we're happy with that. We'll see what happens in Tuscaloosa. So Camille's got people there to check on him. Some. Ruth 1:3, then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons. So in a foreign land, away from home, away from her family, and away from the influence of those who worship God. Another part of that. Naomi loses her husband, Elimelech. Now the boys took wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, the name of the other was Ruth, and they dwelt there about 10 years. So they lived there in Moab for about 10 years, and the boys decided to find them some wives. How do you think Naomi felt about this? Not too happy? Not too happy. Probably so. I mean, you're happy when you found somebody. You're not happy that you broke God's laws. You've been there 10 years by yourself. I don't know. She'd been a faithful woman to keep the Word of God going. Not the tradition that they typically had. Anyways, the Israelites were forbidden from marrying Canaanites due to the danger of dragging them away from God. That's what it says there. Nor shall you make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to your son, nor take your daughter for your son. For they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. So the anger of the Lord will be aroused against you and destroy you suddenly.
That was for 10 generations, right?
Say it again?
That was for 10 generations.
For 10 generations is what it said about Moab. I don't know if this one applied to 10 generations. It probably just flat out applied.
You can't not if they put David in that realm.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So something's different here, right? That broke a law, but at the same time, Jesus himself comes through this lineage that was got a foreigner in it. So how do you reconcile that there's a foreigner in that bloodline? A stranger, an alien. At some point, she stopped being a stranger or an alien, right?
Gentiles are alien to Christianity according to the Jews or some.
Yeah. Gentiles are alien to Christianity and to the Jews. However, by and large, we're all from that, right? Gentile of some form or fashion. So things change. Things change. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died, so the woman survived her 2 sons and her husband. According to the Jewish Targum, the lives of Mahlon and Chilion were cut short due to their marriages to Moabite women. Jewish Targum that's a rabbinical text, right, Paul? I think it's an annotated text by rabbis. I might be wrong on that, but I think it is. So anyways, that's their tradition, that's why their marriages were cut short. How do you think that Naomi felt after her second son died? I'm assuming they didn't both die at the same time, but how do you think she felt about that?
Later on, and she was bitter.
You know, that's a really a strange word, isn't it? But it's, yeah. We know later on she's bitter. Lost? Bitter? Bitter towards what? Moab? God?
Probably that she verbalizes her frustration, at least her frustration with God.
She's frustrated with God. She's frustrated with everything. She's just not even the same person. She's so bitter. She's an alien right there. She's not only came from somewhere else, but everything that she brought with her is gone. It's just her. That's what's left. Verse 6, then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people, and it was by giving them bread. So she lives there 10 years. Why do you think she wants to return to Bethlehem? No more family? I mean, Moab's just not home, right? She's just passing through. Sojourner. She knows that. It's just not home. If something happened to me, would Camille go back to Tennessee? At one point, that answer was clearly yes. Would it be still that way today? I don't know. But anyways, yeah, but it's home. That's where she'd go. Do we feel at home because of where we are or because who we're with?
Be both. A lot of people are, especially previous generations, where in rural families where farms were involved, they were very, very tied to the land.
Sure.
So the land was a big part of home, but it's also family.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. I've basically grown up with that. My family's from the Midwest, and I have cousins who have, their family's been on the same farm for over 300 years. That's a long time to farm the same land. It's not been easy, I know that. I work with mom and dad every day, so same kind of thing. The shop's as much home as the house is to me. Sometimes even more, but it's just, it is. It's that way. Is it where you're at or who you're with? It's all home. What can you say about the feeling of loneliness and the effect it has on a normal human being? The word sojourner, the traveler, and you see some of these people, at this time, traveling by yourself, it's not tourism. You know, what would make you just get up and walk across to another country by yourself? It's a lonely journey. I've always been intrigued by the Appalachian Trail. I've read books on that. It's a one-person journey. You walk by yourself for, I don't know what it is, 1,400 miles or something. And I think I could do that until I see that, they walk in a thunderstorm all day. I'm not interested in walking in a thunderstorm all day. I'm just not interested in that.
There was a man in the church in Morgantown who had always wanted to do that. He had been a doctor, and I think he was in his 60s, he was late 60s. It pretty much took him 11 months. And he did. He successfully walked the entire trail. He walked south to north. He started south in very, very early spring so that he wasn't winding up in the winter. And it was interesting, some of the things that he would put out. He would often talk about how amazed he was at God's creation. But then he got down to the mechanics of the fact that he'd have to communicate with his wife so she could meet him at a certain point on the trail to get him a new pair of boots.
Yeah.
And whatever else he had worn out in the walking process.
One of the book I read, it was called AWOL on Appalachian Trail, and it was actually by a guy from Titusville. Oddly, I found out about halfway through. But he would, they have these trail towns, when they'd stop, and they have mailboxes, and he had stuff set up to mail to these places. Or like you said, he'd have to stop and order a set of boots or whatever. A lot of this is before cell phones. And very strange. I read another book that was on the Pacific Crest Trail. A lady did that by herself, but she counts the number of toenails she loses through the thing. So, tough. But that one, I think it's called Wild, is the one where the lady goes on the Pacific Crest Trail, and it was after a divorce, and she finds herself by being by herself. So, it'd be lonely. How easy it would have been for Naomi to sit and brood in her sorrows. Just sit. Or maybe engage with the Moabites. Go to Moabite bingo. Moabite square dancing. I don't know what the Moabites did. Would have been easy to do that? Could you have blamed her? I don't know about blame, but you could say, you know why. You know why she did that. What kind of assurance do we have for such a situation?
He is with us.
He's with us. So
We're not really strangers, foreigners, and aliens, but we are sojourners. The offer to take us back home. That's what we can depend on. Verses 7 and 8. Therefore he went out from the place where she was. Therefore she went out from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. Is there any indication that Naomi requested Orpah or Ruth to go with her? Just,
not at all.
I'm going back home.
Had initially preferred they stay.
Yeah.
Just return to your mom's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you. You dealt with this. I'm asking God to, deal kindly with foreigners. Really, they're not foreigners. They're in their own land, I guess, but they're not God's people. But she's requested God deals kindly with them. Yeah, don't come with me. What seems to be the attitude of Orpah and Ruth towards Naomi? It becomes that way. It does. It's just like, I think you're right. I think this is what it says. So they went on their way to return. They start out and they're going to go with her. We're just going to go with you. We've all been through this together. They're just going to go. But yeah, it does get to exactly that. Verse 9, the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, Surely we will return with you to your people. So Ruth says, Go, find a husband, find a good life. They cry, they wail. No, we're going with you. There's some serious love right there. I mean, they love Naomi. They're going to go with her. Verse 11, but Naomi said, Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. For I should say I have hope if I should have a husband tonight and should also bear sons. Would you wait for them till they're grown? Would you restrain yourselves from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. So she says, Go back. Go back. I don't have any more kids. If I was pregnant today, you're not going to wait around till these guys are grown. Just doesn't make sense. Just go back. Whose sacrifice would be greater if they returned home? Who has the greater sacrifice? You're talking to yourself. She's afraid to talk to the microphone.
I think that Ruth and Oprah would give up the most because they're young enough to marry again and have a family. But if they stayed in Moab with Ruth, it would just be the three ladies helping themselves take care of each other.
Yeah, it'd be tough. It'd be tough for three of them to
Take care of one another. If they go back, they got a chance to live a life that they tried to have, a life that everybody else has. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Orpah's impulse reaction was to go with Naomi. Though it may have been based on her heart's strongest pleadings, her decision changed when she counted the cost of living there. Do you have friends like this? They'll weep and sympathize with us, but after all said and done, they leave us to our fate to seek our own fortunes. Is that the way friends ought to be? At some point, you got to do it, right? You got to step out on your own. Ruth's decision to follow Naomi did not waver. She didn't change her mind. You have friends like that too? They sympathize, but they cling to us. They're there every step of the way. Two types of Christians they represent. One gives to Christ in the church that's comparatively cheap and easy. It gives it honestly out of devotion to the master, but when a sacrifice is demanded, he shrinks and fails. The other is devout, cross-bearing follower of Christ through it all. She leads a life of self-forgetfulness and hard labor for the truth. And we see both kinds of Christians. Just an example. When face to face with the necessity of making a choice, why do some people seek to defer their decision? Why do some people decide to wait? Or maybe not make a decision at all? How about that? What's for dinner? I don't know. Food, right? What's for dinner? You got that? Sometimes nobody makes a decision. The decision will be made for me. It just happens that way. She said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you, or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people. And your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. And there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me. So do you think Orpah's decision had any impact on Ruth? Orpah goes back. Ruth says, wherever you go, I'll go. Whatever you do, I'll do. Your God's my God. She,
It appears Ruth was committed here.
she's just committed. Yeah, I mean, this is full commitment. Didn't make a decision to leave. This is, no, here are my reasons, and here's what I'm going to do. She's full on committed. Part of Ruth's decision was to follow God. Your God will be my God. Can we simply drift into salvation based on our company, our companions? Or do you have to consciously make that decision too? Consciously make that decision.
But she appears to make a conscious decision.
Yeah. It's not just, like I say, she's going to go with Naomi. She made a conscious decision there.
It's not when we get there, I'll go to church with you, don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah.
It's your God will be my God.
And there's a lot to that. You know, what it takes to do that. Not as simple as just I'll show up, check the box. Yeah. With our kids, you know, we hope that because they go with us, they make that decision, but it has to be conscious. What was I talking about? Oh, I was waiting on a pizza the other night, and the guy was, he went to a church, but he didn't believe in what they believed. He said, I'm divorced, and they throw me under the bus. He says, he said, I can't believe that I'm just left out to dry, and I'm hang out to dry, and my life's not worth anything because I'm divorced. Why doesn't he look for another church? Because probably that's the church that mom and dad went to. It's bloodline type church, passed down. I am this religion. I am Republican/Democrat. I am fan of the Gators or Seminoles. That kind of stuff happens. He didn't believe what they had to offer, but he didn't seem interested in looking anywhere else. So, do decisions have a great effect on our character? Does character have a great effect on our decisions?
Yes.
You like my trick questions, don't you? I think yes. I think yeah. Our decisions have a great effect on our character. We're shaped by our surroundings. We're shaped by our experiences. We're shaped by the people we're with. And our character has a great effect on decisions. No, I don't think I'm going to do that. Or yeah, I'll pick that up and do it.
I think the decision that both of them made, it did affect Ruth in that she started to think about what was Oprah returning to, serving idol gods, killing children, and maybe she was more committed to God than that and didn't want to go back to
That's a good point. Didn't want to go back to that God. Didn't want to go back to that lifestyle. I mean, the guys there didn't attract her like Chillin and Mullen and Chillian. Those guys didn't attract her. That lifestyle didn't attract her. So you're right. Maybe that helped. No, just added to it. No, I can't go back to that. Is true love possible without friendship? I mean, these are two women. I mean, I'm not going to put anything more on that, but obviously Ruth loves Naomi. It's, is that possible without friendship?
You wouldn't think so, but it could be solely rooted in respect.
Yeah, it could be respect. I mean, I don't think their marriages were arranged marriages, but I don't know, maybe they were. They did it at the marketplace or something. But yeah, is true love possible without friendship? Respect? I guess.
Well, yeah, I think they would, but
old and young. They don't think of it as friendship. They think of it as honoring.
Yeah, I'll say that.
That's a good point. I mean, there's a generation between these two. So the young and the old, maybe it's not a friendship. It's I'll honor this person. That love is based on that. Yeah.
It's
Survival. Yeah, it could be survival. Jamie went to Doug Gertis's class, and she told me, she goes, I went to class with the 70-year-olds. William said, I'm only 69. So he took offense to the fact that he was not a 70-year-old. But she's enjoying that class. But it's a good place to be. Like you say, are they friends? But she's got deep respect and love for everybody in there. Is true love possible without God? I love snickerdoodles. That's why we have them at VBS. God is love. There you go. I think you're absolutely hit it on the head. God is love. So true love is not possible without God. When she saw that she was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her. Here it is. It's the cold shoulder. So Naomi gives Ruth the cold shoulder. Don't go with me. Don't make this decision. I'm not talking to you. I'm not looking at you. Just mad. How can a mother-in-law exercise her greatest influence? How about a daughter-in-law?
Love and respect.
yeah.
And he's going to force her to go. Go.
Go away. That ain't going to be it. Love, respect, both ways. The two of them went until they came to Bethlehem. And it happened when they had come to Bethlehem that all the city was excited because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" So what effect did it have on the people of Bethlehem? They're excited. They're excited to come in town. It's a big deal, right? When we go back to Camille's hometown, people call. "I heard you were in town." Don't they? They call. They heard Camille was back in town. Nobody calls. Nobody calls when I'm back in town. But they always call when Camille's in town. It's because they know where to find me. So, yeah, I mean, the town is excited. You're like, "Is that Naomi?" It is Naomi, right? She says to them, "Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why do you call me Naomi? Since the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me." We talked about earlier, Naomi means pleasant. Mara means bitter. So does she sound bitter?
Yes, she does.
Yeah. She's got a rant going on here.
I looked ahead, and the way Kaufman chose to comment about this is he said Naomi's thoughts of what she believed that
God had done to her were by no means correct, but she knew of none other upon whom she could fasten the responsibility.
There was nobody else she could blame.
yeah, there was nobody else she could blame because there's not yet the knowledge of what's coming.
Yeah, you're right. She hasn't been bumped into what's coming.
Right.
She's had 2 bumps in her life right now. Bump to go to Moab, bump that her husband died, bump to go back.
That's what we go through today when things are troubled in our lives. And we have to get through them. And we have to get through them without blaming or criticizing God.
Okay.
But know that He has a plan. We got to get through it.
He's got a plan. And right now,
Now, she is feeling like an alien, a foreigner. I'm not with God. God's dealt harshly with me. He's testified against me. I'm not God's person at all right now. This is how she feels. The Almighty has afflicted me. And Paul said, who else is she going to blame? If she had social media, she would put her rant online. She would let everybody know about the rant. You know, it would be published, rant upon rant. That's what people do. Take another.
You see that
Today, with people who do not have a knowledge, love, and understanding of God, it's very easy to pick this name, because that's in essence what He is, when they don't follow and don't understand, and just say, well, you know, you always talk about God. Well, it's God's fault that this happened to me. And that's just their lack of knowledge and understanding. But
she's at a
time where it's not real easy to figure out.
not easy to figure out.
Not easy. It's early in the story. It's chapter 8 of 66. Yeah, it's early in the story, and she doesn't see the big picture yet. Similar to Job's friends, you know, just curse God and die. It's your fault. You know, this is kind of where she's at.
And I think sometimes
For those of us who are fortunate enough to know God, love God, try our best to serve God, that's not who we think to blame. You know, that's not the direction we go in. You can blame a lot. You can blame a lot of things, and sometimes we're very slow to blame ourselves, and that's where it belongs. And that may be where it belongs. But I don't know many Christians who are quick to blame God.
I don't hear
Here, quickly, I see it in the world.
oh yeah, that's what I mean. It's in the
World everywhere.
that's it, well, I get pointed at sometimes. Yeah.
We don't blame God, but we ask God for help.
We do ask for God for help. We don't blame him for the ills in our lives.
Yeah,
But
That's the reaction. Maybe I don't understand would be a reaction, but not ever blame.
Right.
not ever blame God. I think the why me, that's fair, you know.
It's all about free will.
Yeah.
I'll give you the free will. So do you think the people of Bethlehem could see the differences in her?
Because she said, don't call me Naomi.
Is this Naomi? They said it back in verse 19. Is that Naomi? She's been gone down 10 years, but it just don't look like the same woman. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab. Now they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Verse 22. So what will the barley harvest hold for Ruth? Like I can get any of these words out today. What will the barley harvest hold for Ruth and Naomi? You already know the story, but you know. Food, you know, right? Food is definitely one thing. And it turns out actually it's the next harvest that it turns out for a mate, for a husband, for Ruth. Ruth 2:1, again in chapter 2. There's a relative of Naomi's husband, a man of great wealth, according to the New King James. His name is Boaz. The NIV describes him as a man of standing. The ESV calls him a worthy man. So according to Jewish tradition, Boaz was Elimelech's nephew. How would you describe Boaz?
That's what it says. He was wealthy.
Wealthy.
Boy, his actions are that of a godly man.
Say it again?
His actions are that of a godly man.
A
Godly man. Yeah.
A godly man, not just money. He's a worthy man. He's a godly man.
Pretty soon, that word.
Yeah. He takes in a stranger. He takes in a.
So Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him in whose sight I may find favor. She said to her, go, my daughter. This is where we ended last night, was God's provision that the fields weren't harvested clear to the edge. I think that was Leviticus. It was set up like that. And it comes to fruition in Ruth, that as Ruth and Naomi come to town, this helps them out. They got no men. They got no money. They got no fill in the blank. So what does the younger and stronger Ruth ask to do?
I'm going to do some work and get some food.
Let me get to work. Let me go get food. Let me feed us. You taking care of me, I'm taking care of you. I told you, God provided for the poor. He provided for this situation. What mindset's necessary in order to adjust to the circumstances of life, especially if they're not as we would have them? What kind of mindset do you have to just adjust to what life throws at you? Survivor. I'm just passing through. This world's not my home. God's got a plan for me. Yeah.
It's kind of like a directional thing, like when that boat was talking about too.
Keeps you in there.
Yeah.
Steers you.
Steers you? Yeah, it does steer you. It steers towards him, not away from him.
Are you humble enough to profess? Hi. 3. So is it cookie time for us? So we're done, I guess. We're done. We're done then, huh?
Yeah.
Cool.
Cookie time.
Cookie time. All
We're
right.
in our last session, so whenever.
All right, we'll take it. I'll wrap it up with that. You see Naomi and her family as foreigners going into Moab. You see them foreigners marry into the family. Foreigners, they go back. Ruth goes into a foreign land. Provisions God already had, the bumps that take place, God provides for them with food. God provides for a place. Like I said, at the end of the story, she is part of the bloodline of Jesus Christ. There's no gap there. You know, you can't have generation after generation after generation and a gap. She's in that bloodline, even as a foreigner, a stranger, an alien. She's a key to that. Why? Why a stranger? There's two strangers in the bloodline, Rahab being another one. Why have a stranger in the bloodline of Christ? Have they kept the bloodline so pure?
It leads up to it becomes available to everybody.
Eventually it does become available.
Available to everybody. You're right. They did a big job of keeping the bloodline clean. Don't marry the Moabites. Don't marry their Canaanites. Don't let their gods. The purpose was don't let their gods pull you away. But you can see with Ruth, she ain't got that God. Cookie time? Cookie time. All right. So anywho, guys want to have class tomorrow night? You want to have class tomorrow night? I kind of thought we weren't going to have class tonight, and Matt called me and shamed me into it. So we'll have class tomorrow night. We'll talk more about foreigners and stuff. I got some ideas of, we might just look at some things and places. The prodigal son, I talked about him yesterday. The seeds thrown by the sower, parable of the sower, they end up in some weird places where they're choked out. But what if? That's because they're strangers and aliens. If they were put in a proper place, how would they grow? We'll try to look at some of that kind of thing. If you got ideas, hit me up. Send me some stuff, and I'll see what I can put together for tomorrow night. So thanks for being here. We'll go get some cookies, and we won't come back in here tonight. We'll just call it a day. If you want to go home, go. If you want to eat some cookies, take 2 or 3. Thanks for joining us.